We all want to be happy. Whoever we are, wherever we are, almost all of our thought and action goes toward this goal of trying to be happy. But for some reason, most of us go around our lives feeling profoundly unhappy much of the time. Although I don't think it's reasonable to expect to be happy all the time, I do wonder if part of the reason why happiness seems so out of reach is because we confuse it with things that it is not. Scholars and thinkers since ancient times have tried to pin down exactly what happiness is and how we should best go about getting it. But I can only conclude that they have not yet succeeded because we, as a human race, are largely still very unhappy. There's a chapter from the Tao Te Ching that I think casts pretty good light on this question, but to make sense of this chapter, I think we first need to discuss our concept of happiness. Personally, I think we get a little confused about what happiness really is. There are plenty of things that we can confuse happiness for, but I do just want to focus on two for this video: excitement and the absence of pain. I think one reason why it is so easy to mistake excitement for happiness is because excitement is such a captivating feeling. It takes over you completely and distracts you from everything else. But excitement is not happiness. It is different. And we better not get the two mixed up, especially if we want to think of happiness in any kind of lasting sense. Because excitement is by nature one of the most transitory emotions of the whole human experience. It's simply impossible to be excited all of the time. This is probably because excitement is so closely connected with novelty, and by definition, novelty involves breaking away from constancy and consistency. Novelty only lasts as long as something is new or unknown, and so if we constantly seek novelty, we'll be forced to go to more and more extreme lengths in order to achieve that goal. Inevitably, the innocent sources of novelty will dry up, and we will be forced to turn to ones that will cause issues for us and for others. The pursuit of constant novelty is a goal that is doomed to bring only misery. But what about the absence of pain? I refuse to conflate the absence of pain with happiness, largely for two reasons. The first reason is similar to my reason for rejecting excitement as happiness, that it simply cannot persist indefinitely. The world we live in is difficult and dangerous. Although there is much to enjoy and to be pleased with in this world, pain is inevitable. Relationships, hopes and dreams, and even just the act of physically interfacing with the world we live in are fraught with both pleasure and pain. Anyone who wishes to avoid pain altogether will find that they simply cannot do it. The impossibility of this idea is obvious when we confront it rationally, but the thing is, we usually don't confront it rationally. The desire to avoid pain remains ever present, but yet often mostly subconscious, hiding out in the backs of our minds, often influencing our actions without our even realizing it. However, I think that if we are ever to be truly happy, we need to confront this idea. We need to come to terms with the fact that life contains pain in order for that pain to not have power over us. The second reason I think we should avoid conflating the absence of pain with happiness is that I think the absence of pain is not merely unrelated to happiness, but is in direct opposition to it. If we could press a button and eliminate all pain from our lives, all sorrow and heartache, and all difficulty, what would we live for? If you had grown up never knowing what pain was, do you think you would be happy? I personally don't think you would. We only understand what pleasure is because we have experienced its opposite. And now it's time for that chapter from the Tao Te Ching I promised you. Chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching says, "Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there's evil. Therefore having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another." Duality is what gives things meaning. Any life that was completely devoid of pain would have to be devoid of pleasure as well. I can only imagine that this life would take on a sort of numbness and bleakness that would be its own very peculiar kind of hell. If we are looking for either constant excitement or the complete absence of pain in order to be happy, we will spend our whole lives being constantly disappointed, and be all the more miserable for it. Happiness is not found in constant excitement or comfort. It is found partly in accepting the dual nature of our existence, and in making our own peace with it. This doesn't mean that we become immune to suffering. It means that we accept and embrace the full spectrum of the emotional richness of life. When we experience pleasure, we see it not as a state that we must hold on to at all costs, but only one end of a scale that is balanced on the other end with pain that must inevitably come. But when we experience pain, we think of it not as a sensation that we should run from, but as a part of the harmonious interplay of our existence that makes it worth living. We experience the pain, we acknowledge it, we accept it, and we find peace in knowing that nothing has gone wrong, but that it is all part of the plan. If you have any thoughts about this, be sure to leave them down in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching. Peace and blessings.